Hi, Jeff.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing good, sir. How you doing?
Good to see you.
Thank you very much for giving me opportunity again to interview you for my podcast again.
For sure. Are we doing audio or audio and video?
Audio and video.
Oh, awesome. Sounds really
Yeah.
good.
I've seen you're doing great work since a couple of years. So what's going on AWS and around the world? And I have seen coming up with new ideas and new thoughts globally.
Sure. Let's see. So at the end of 2024, after 20 years of being the lead blogger on the AWS news blog, I officially retired from the news blog after about 1.5 million words and 3,300 plus posts. And 20 years seemed like a really good amount of time to be doing one thing. It was an awesome 20 years. And so I spent all of last year traveling the world and speaking at AWS community events. I think I visited about 14 countries in 2025. Again, primarily focusing on developers, especially early to mid-career developers at AWS community events. And it's super fun to go to almost any part of the world and to see young developers fresh in their careers. It's super excited about technology and cloud and AWS, and to get to talk to them and to meet with them, kind of hear their stories and get a good sense of what they think of today's tech world and what how they want to educate themselves and to participate in it. So that was last year, and this year so far I've been to Japan and I have been to Ireland, and I've got a few more countries on my list. I'm going to Chile in a month or so, and probably head off to Turkey and Armenia after that. So some just I just love to go where the developers are and speak to them. But lots is on their mind right now. There's a lot of excitement around AI, of course, and developers are really kind of thinking this is super cool. It's super powerful. How do I need to adapt myself in order to make sure that I'm going to be part of this amazing revolution? So I've been really actually working to emphasize that a bit with developers lately. Make sure they understand that yes, they have a really important role to play, and that there's probably some new skills they'll need to pick up to really be awesome at AI.
So working as a blogger for a long time, writing about AWS and technology. Now, telling I mean developers about the future technology. How you define this diversity?
How do I find it?
How do you define the diversity? Because you have been into different countries.
Let's see. So what I'm seeing with the AI technologies is they're allowing more developers in more life situations and more technical situations and more backgrounds all over the world to be able to participate. So I think back to early in my career, and early in my tech career, everybody had the same goal of basically getting themselves to Silicon Valley, and that was like almost step one of your adventure career as a tech developer or an entrepreneur. You had to get to Silicon Valley somehow to just be at the center of all the action. And a couple of decades later, we see that it's very different, and you can learn and you can innovate and you can invent and you can succeed wherever you are. And I think developers really get that, and I think it's a really important message that you there isn't just one tiny part of one country in the world that's like the center of everything. There's amazing things happening everywhere, and the more places I go and the more developers that I get to meet, the more I get convinced of that.
So now, after 2024 reinvent, how AWS is supporting and helping the different businesses and different industries.
Well, a couple different ways, and for sure, we've been continuing to grow the what you could think of as almost the traditional set of foundational AWS services. There were innovations really across the board at reInvent. From new features for Amazon S3 and EC2 and SageMaker and RDS and DynamoDB, all of the kind of the bread and butter foundational services, if you will. But on the other end of the spectrum, we launched 18 new AI models in a single day, We launched just a plethora of different AI features to help developers build AI powered apps. We launched educational programs. We're really spanning the spectrum and just making really clear that there's just so much to offer within the AWS framework that developers can latch onto and learn, and just a lot of different ways to do that.
So 18 different services in single day, and how the R&D is going on in AWS.
It's still moving strong. So that was actually 18 different framework models for AI. So that itself is just a big step forward, and it represents a lot of flexibility and power for developers. So there are lots of different models out there to developers to choose from, and they're kind of leapfrogging each other capability and power wise. But developers have learned that with these all these different models, they can choose the appropriate model for the different use cases. There's models that are wonderful for creative work and for problem solving and for coding and for analysis, and they're not locked into any one particular model. They get this freedom of choice with models, which I think is just super important for our customers.
Different customers of yours will have different requirements, and AWS is solving their problems. So how do you understand actually things work in different industries?
Well, the way that works is it's the responsibility of each of the different teams. That each we don't have like one part of the organization that's tasked with simply connecting with customers. We've got this somewhat famous leadership principle at Amazon called customer obsession, and the customer obsession really means that every person who comes in contact with a customer in any way, you need to focus on that customer. You need to, sure, you want to like deliver whatever might be the interesting thoughts on your mind, maybe some news of a new service or a new feature or a new program of some sort. But it's also your responsibility to listen to that customer, to sometimes literally show up with your paper and your pencil and say, okay, I'm here to listen to you, and I want to understand your business and your use case and your applications, and give me your feedback so I can actually go back to the teams and hand that directly to the team. So having that mentality of customer obsession is super important, but then also having these mechanisms where we can just quietly sit down with customers, we can listen to them, we can learn from them, we can make sure that part of our responsibility is then take what we've learned and we can bring that back to our customers. And so that's something I really like to focus on, is that at every trip that I plan, whenever I'm planning, let's say, a trip to go. So last year, for example, I went to Bangalore to speak at an AWS Community Day. So that was the center of my trip, but I also worked with our local office to make sure that I had a multitude of opportunities to sit down on really one-on-one or small group settings, to sit down with customers, connect with them, speak with some press. All of this is just effectively connecting and learning opportunities that I really do my best to cultivate as I travel.
So what are the interesting questions that you hear from developers?
The most common question I've been getting really for a year plus now is, well, first it's kind of like, will AI take my job? And I say, no, it's not going to take your job, but you're going to want to learn some new skills to make sure that you're able to really survive and prosper in this new world. And then they really say, okay, well, tell me about that. Give me some specifics about I can do to make sure that I'm fully prepared for that AI world. So I'm always just more than happy to share specifics with them. Like you can't just say, well, just go ahead and learn AI and everything will be great. You need to be very, very specific to help them out. And so that's what I've been doing.
So you have been in technology from 20 plus years in different roles. You also had your own entity, and you have been writing about technology from long time. So how do you, when you look back and look at yourself, where you have started as a operator in a store. So how do you define yourself, about your complete experience?
Sure. So it's been a really exciting career. And I started out when I was a teenager, really, in tech. I was 15, 16, 17 years old at my youngest jobs that I had in tech. and now I'm almost 50 years past that. So it's been really, really fun. And I think what is most interesting is starting out pretty young and being really deeply focused only on the technology to, as you kind of grow up and you mature and get a little bit more perspective, just realizing how important the human side, the people side is of this as well. And then one of the things I emphasize a lot with developers right now, I say, yes, your technical skills matter. You still need to develop and continue to enhance your technical skills, but it's your human skills are probably going to make the difference. It's going to be things like if you're a developer and you want to build AI applications, let's say, you need to be incredibly good at like observing situations and understanding interesting situations. So maybe you're tasked with a customer and you want to connect with that customer, understand their business challenges, and you want to be very observant and look for details and say, okay, as a developer, I'm going to go and analyze that situation, deeply understand it, and then I have to be as good at that understanding. I need to be good at communicating that situation. And so as developers, we were mostly trained to communicate with code to the computer, to the compiler effectively. We're now talking to our AIs and to our AI agents in a very different form. As developers, we would try to write as little code as possible and it had to be this very precise, all the punctuation, all the symbols, perfect. With talking to our agents, there's a little bit more room for flexibility. We probably want to be more verbose to give the agents more context, more information to go on. We can add a little bit of detail and nuance to give that agent, again, more perspective on what it is doing. But another aspect of this is for most of my time in tech, computers and programming was kind of like effectively English centric. You had to learn to read and write enough English to read the programming manuals and understand the programming language and error messages and so forth, and to communicate with the community. A lot of these new models have been trained on just dozens to hundreds of languages. And I love that because this is, again, we talked about developers at one point having to get to Silicon Valley as their starting point. Now developers can speak their own language in the place where they live and they can succeed. I love this because it opens up the whole idea of development to more people, wherever they are around the world. I think that's super cool and super important. But I think it's also going to see that we're going to see these very incredibly local applications and solutions that are built. We're going to see that smart developers are going to say, I can build applications for my city or my neighborhood or my block or for my little shop down the street. And because they can do this very easily and cost effectively with AI tools, we'll see millions and millions of apps that are these effectively like hyper local applications solving very specific problems. So the little shop, the little restaurant, the little service that is maybe one employee can suddenly use AI to solve a problem that they have. I don't think we're even close to the starting point with that. There's so many interesting opportunities there.
So 14 different countries you have traveled and you have seen developers working in their own countries. So do you see any difference because the world is a collection of different things and coming humans coming from different places. AWS is a common thing you know for different countries.
Sure. I see more in common than differences. There's certainly different people in different places have maybe different approaches to how they maybe go communicating or problem solving, but there's this almost just global excitement around all of this, and for a lot of the reasons we've already mentioned. But this idea of solving problems for yourself and your local community, people are starting to get that and understand this. This is really powerful, and this is just going to change a lot.
So anything that actually impacted in these years, for the businesses from AWS,
In what sense are you thinking?
in productivity, in
Well,
increasing
certainly
their
the AI
productivity.
tools are going to give developers more productivity than ever before, and we're seeing for certain kinds of of applications, that developers do have the opportunity to get, sometimes up to 10 times as productive as before. Now, the interesting thing about these AI tools is they take a good developer and magnify their skills to make them an even more powerful developer. They don't necessarily take a so-so, barely adequate developer, make them a good developer. The development skills still matter. Your ability to express problems to your AI tool of choice, your ability to interact back and forth, to give the right commands, to process the results, to look at the proposed solutions that your AI says. If your AI says, okay, I've looked at the problem and here's how I would propose to solve it for you, your skill, your judgment, your knowledge of the problem space, your knowledge of the tech, that all counts for a lot when you look at the proposal from the AI and you say, okay, that's great, let's go ahead and do it. Or you say, you know what, I still know more than you do. Let's try a different approach. And so that's realizing that the AI is there as a magnifier and a helper and effectively this assistant is so important. It shouldn't be driving. It should be helping you to drive and to navigate.
So, in the past conversation that we had, I asked you a question regarding the connectivity between human and computers, the technology. So you have been in the technology from your 16, and now it's up, almost 50 years. So you are observing and you are witnessing the highest level of technology in human evolution, right?
Correct.
So you know uh, how different it is from that year to this year when it comes to the connection between humans and technology.
Well, I'm not sure if I would. The connection is different in the way that we express ourselves. Because we're expressing ourselves to AI with probably more words and more detail than ever before. I don't think when I think of connection, I almost think of like an emotional situation, which I don't think is really a good way to think about our AI as having like a personality and emotions necessarily connected to it. But I do think that there is like this kind of back and forth connection and not quite a dependency, but an understanding and a reliance. And that after a while, as you're using an AI tool, you get to understand effectively the rhythm of development and making requests and waiting a little bit and seeing the results come back, giving you a little bit of kind of a not quite an insight into how things work, but like kind of the expected rhythm of development. I think is a good way to think about that connection.
So the communication that you have mentioned, which is core and which is the foundation for the human and technology, uh, and how AWS is working on it, and all these years, because you are writing about AWS since long time, you are the right person to answer what all internally are integrated in order to help
Sure.
the
So
developers.
we have long done a lot of work to build and to support community days. So we have these events that our communities organize all over the globe called community days. And so these are not sponsored by AWS. These are built by our community members, and then we help out by probably sending them some speakers and some swag. But these are built by our community, and really shows the strength of the community and the fact that they're doing this to basically build and share their excitement around AWS is to me really interesting. So we have the community days. We recognize the people doing this. We give them a kind of a special label called a community builder. We have other folks that are out there that creating content and organizing community heroes. And then within schools and universities, we have something called cloud clubs that are effectively for the students in the schools and universities. So these are some of the ways that we're actually building and supporting communities, and then helping them to connect and to learn and to be on a path to have a career that probably revolves around AWS.
Is that not a difficult job or challenging for AWS to, maintain global infrastructure?
It is, but that's part of what we're really good at is running globally at very very large scale. So we've built that expertise up since the beginning of the company 30 plus years ago, and so it's never easy. But we've got the right people that are building the AWS regions. We've got 30 plus regions around the world that are effectively each multiple data centers to support our customers.
So, what all changes that happen in different governments that you are working with in different countries?
Well, I'm not personally connected to that part very much, but certainly we run within the legal framework of each different country. We always, as we are proposing to launch AWS in a new country and to build the regions built of data centers, we work with local government and the federal government to make sure that they understand that we're doing something that's going to bring skills and jobs to that area. We'll often either create new kind of training programs and upskilling programs. If there's existing resources and partners that are there, we'll do our best to identify them and to provide them with additional support and make it really clear that this has a very measurable positive economic impact on these areas as we build and enter those markets.
So, how different it is for, using AWS for different businesses when, for startups or for big companies for large scale?
So it's not really that much different functionally. What does happen as companies get bigger, they'll tend to want to not have all of their AWS resources inside of a single account. So we have a feature called AWS organizations where they can basically create individual accounts, maybe for each application or each business unit or each company inside of a big organization, if it's a multinational company. And using organizations, they can have these individual accounts that give them effectively different management control. They can put guardrails of various sorts, so they can control which services and features each of those different organizations has access to. And so we do have great features that as our customers go from, let's say, a student writing their own little application to a company that's got a few applications to a gigantic multinational organization that has people in different parts of the world. AWS knows how to scale up and gives you different levels of control and flexibility with each of those.
So, how AI replaced developers in AWS?
How does it replace developers?
Yeah.
It really doesn't replace developers. It makes developers more powerful. And if anything, we're seeing that, as we grasp the power of AI, it's opening up new avenues for us to solve problems for our customers just more quickly than ever before.
So, what is your take on AI?
Oh, wow, that's a big question. To me, it is the newest in just a long chain of evolution that just shows how computers are getting better at helping people to solve problems. So I like to think back to the early days of my career and to some of the first personal computers. We think about like the original Apple II, we think about the original IBM personal computer, the PC, both products of like the late 1970s, early 1980s. These were incredible revolutions because they empowered individual people to do what used to be things by specialists. So there was a time when business people wouldn't do their own correspondence. You'd have a secretary whose specialist was typing and making letters. Or you wouldn't do complex math yourself. You'd have your accounting department or your analytics department to do that. If you wanted to do fancy documents, well, you had to go and use a typesetter to make fancy documents. And each of these features was replaced by VisiCalc or 123 or Excel or Word or PageMaker, all of these very early applications that said, okay, all these individual people now have more power than ever before, and they can solve their own problems versus asking someone else to solve problems for them. And the more I think about it, there's these just great parallels from those early days of personal computers to today's world of AI, where empowering individual people to solve their own problems in just increasingly powerful ways, just day by day by day.
So one day you have actually introduced the 18 frameworks for for developers to use it for the businesses. So how that help developers actually to make things faster?
Sure. So each of those different frameworks is essentially a different LLM or large language model. And some of those come directly from Amazon, but others come from our partners like OpenAI and Anthropic and NVIDIA and so forth. So what we've been able to do, we have this service called Amazon Bedrock. And Amazon Bedrock is basically this kind of, you can kind of think of it as almost like this switching point where at the top there's just one programming interface, and then inside we have hundreds of different LLMs, the large language models that developers can get access to. So developers can effectively write their code and write their prompts and then use them across just this incredibly wide variety of different LLMs without having to keep changing all their code. They'll probably want to adjust their prompts a little bit for because the different models respond differently to prompts. But this just gives developers more power and more control and ultimately solve problems more quickly.
So you have witnessed Gen X, Gen Y, now Gen Z. So in your life, when it comes to
Yeah.
technology. So how do you see this advancement and technology evolution and also human evolution?
Mm. Well, I don't kind of think of humanity too much in terms of generations, and I honestly I don't even know what like years separate generation to generation necessarily. Um, I don't actually tend to correlate age very much with like skill or ability. I see people that of my generation just as productive as whatever's the newest one. Is that Gen Z? I don't even know is Gen Z the youngest ones, but they're all getting value from this. Again, the AI is magnifying the power that people already have. So skilled people can use this to make them even more skilled. People early in their career, but with good skills, are going to use AI to help them progress and to learn to use it as just effectively just a fundamental part of how they build applications.
I have seen, youngsters and, young developers, talking about Jeff and, about Jeff is a legend of Amazon Web Services. Like everywhere in the internet, when I see people talk about you and they feel so excited when they meet you and, when, they shared with me that, they had asked some of the questions that, that they had. So how do you have that much of patience and, that much of interest? You are completely connected with the next generation and there is no barrier, and how we are able to continue that.
Sure. So first, thank you. That's very kind. But so when I was very young, when I was 16, I was fortunate enough to be a member of one of like the first actual what we called a computer club. We had a computer club here in Seattle that was called the Northwest Computer Club. And even though I was the youngest person by maybe like 10 years, they welcomed me, they took me seriously, they allowed me to participate, they answered my questions. They never cared about my background or my age or anything like that. They made me just feel really, really welcome. And I still remember that sense of like, okay, these people are happy that I'm here, and the circle opened up to make sure I could get into the circle when there was a discussion, and there was never any sense of oh you're just the kid and you're not old enough or educated enough or we're not going to take you seriously, and so I've always kind of thought I'm repaying that favor and just making sure that the next generation when I see them I don't ask them like qualify themselves or are you important enough or old enough or whatever. I love to talk to everybody when I get out in the world and get to meet them. I purposefully make myself just open and accessible, and after I give a talk I always make sure that I've got my schedule free for the rest of the day so I can just kind of hang out and just get to have those casual conversations with everyone. I just think giving back in that way and just kind of setting a good example of how you can tend to conduct yourself and behave is really important for that next generation to see.
So how? what is 2025 reinvent is about?
Well, you know what? It's funny. That already seems like ancient history. That was like almost 4 months ago, and so it feels like ancient history. We launched a lot of new services. Like I mentioned, we launched the 18 new foundation models. We launched just so many different new features for AWS at that event, and it's always. But the thing is, it's the customers show up partly for the launches, but it's a lot about education. We always have many sessions. They're devoted not to any kind of marketing, but are absolutely focused on educating our developers and our customers. So it's about the education. It's about a little bit of networking so we can connect and meet each other. It's very light from the marketing side. It's more about the education is what we think of for reInvent.
So what level of AI AWS is using right now?
What level? We're using everything. There's not one particular piece that I could point out and say we're using this model for this purpose. But I see just the kinds of things that my colleagues are doing. Within software development, within marketing, within accounting and finance. There's just so many different AI applications that we're building. And the cool thing is that some of these are built by developers for the other people, but a lot of people are solving their own problems, and it's great to see that the people are just really feeling that they've got the right skills, the right product understanding, the right business understanding, and using tools like Kiro and Amazon Q as part of their daily work to solve their own problems.
So as a visionary, what is going to be after next 5 to 10 years
Oh,
in
visionary! Wow,
AWS?
I don't know if I'm a visionary, but I think we're like the personal computer revolution, which took several decades to really unfold and go from those early PCs to what we have now. We are just at the beginning with AI. We're by the most generous of descriptions, we're probably 3 years into generative AI. So we can look to the next 10 to 20 years, and I think we'll see the models continue to get more sophisticated. They're going to do a better job with less hallucination. We're going to see the hardware continue to get less expensive and more capable, so we can use more AI to solve a given problem cost effectively. And I think that the user skills and experience are just going to continue to develop. We're so close to the beginning of this that it's really hard to say where it's going to take us over the next generation, but certainly going to be exciting.
So as you have mentioned that communication is a part, and also the being customer obsessed is core for the for the development. So taking the feedback of different customers, that to diversified customers, that to globally, and how you are able to um, take that seriously and you know um, make changes in AWS.
So the interesting thing is we always value the feedback regardless of the kind or size of the customer. There's no mechanism inside AWS that says only take the feedback if it's from a large customer using a lot of AWS. The feedback comes from all over in a lot of different forms, and we do our best to just actually almost kind of mask out the customer identity in a sense and say here's feedback from a customer, and it matters a lot. Regardless, we don't say, well, here's customer feedback and it's from a customer that pays us this much per year. It's all about the fact that it's feedback versus what level of business it represents.
Do you have any question that you was asked that drawn your attention from anywhere, or any events that you have attended in any country?
Well, let's see. The interesting thing is it's wonderful to meet developers, and the great thing that you realize from traveling is we're more alike than we're different. There's so many world events that try to like draw lines and separate us and say, well, people from here like this and people from here like that, and these other people are totally different. You kind of realize that, especially for developers, they're all like they're not all the same, but there's common set of kind of thought processes and motivation, and they're all lifelong learners. They all have this incredible just love of solving problems. They enjoy technology. Increasingly, they're becoming more and more social, realizing that you need to work as part of groups and teams, and that solving problems together is super important. So it's a good, to me, like, counterexample to some of the craziness we see in the world today of just people trying to draw too many lines between people and just say, you know what, the developer population in the world, they're not all the same, but they kind of feel like they're on the same team.
So AWS is being the industry leader and for long time and making, I mean, being so adaptive to the new changes or new thought process or new businesses that are coming. So what all that is going on internally in order to be updated, to be the first thing to introduce to the humans.
Sure. So I know it kind of sounds almost too easy, but a lot of it is just connecting with and listening to our customers. And so that's especially our leaders, our VPs and our CEO. A lot of what they do is getting out in the world and meeting with customers. And when customers try to express, well, these are the kind of problems I have, and these are the kind of goals I might have that I'd like to solve with technology and with AWS. And it's up to our leadership to capture that and bring it back and use that to just deeply inform the kind of plans that we put together and that they put together. So there's, yeah, yes, we do a lot of inventing from scratch, but we always do that inventing with an eye to what we've learned from our customers. We don't just invent interesting things and then hand it off to the customer and say, we kind of made this thing almost in isolation. What do you think? We always say, we've listened to 100 customers or 500 customers, and we got all this great ideas and feedback and suggestions. Here's what we learned. Here's what we've done in response to all of that. So being able to launch things that are deeply informed by listening to customers and conveying those needs to our teams is always super important and exciting.
So what is working for AWS to establish the perfect connection between intelligence and artificial intelligence?
Ooh, tell me that one again.
What is working for AWS to establish connection between intelligence and artificial intelligence?
Oh, wow. Well, we're all encouraged and almost like expected to just really get personal hands-on experience. And this again kind of takes me back to the difference between old technologies and AI, where in the distant past, if you wanted to learn a new operating system or an editor or a language, you could sit down and explore it a little bit, but you probably would actually sit down and read the documentation first. And you'd read the reference manual, you'd read the user manual, maybe you read a book that says how to do such and such, all wonderful learning mechanisms. But as you did that, you could basically say, well, I've read the book and I've memorized the language, and I now have this good understanding of here's all the statements, and here's all the data types, here's all the operators, here's all the functions. And you're like, okay, I know the language now. I know the fundamentals. I can do anything with this. But the AI tools are very different. The none of the AI tools come with a list and says, okay, 1 to 100, here's all the things that tool knows how to do. You have to actually go and say, let's build this together. And the tool will say, okay, great. Hey, Jeff, let's build this work together. Let's work on this. And it's that actual, it's the interaction and the experience and what you ask and what you get back and how you read that, process it, understand it, supply feedback. That actual iterative, interactive process is so different than what old generations of developers were trained on. So learning to actually be interactive and to learn by doing, in addition to learning by reading, is to me the fundamental difference.
The great thing is different countries who have a different language, they have their own national language or they have their own regional languages. And being so adaptive and connective, they are talking about AWS in their own language, in Arab
Exactly.
countries or anywhere in European countries. Like, why that is working only for AWS? Like, there is something that is making them to take AWS as their own
Yeah.
adaptive thing.
Well, it actually is not really specific to AWS. Most of the large language models have been trained on a long list of different languages. And so when the model takes text in some language, it reduces it to this thing called a vector that basically is this like multi-dimensional representation of a concept in a word or a statement or a prompt or a request of some sort. Those vectors ultimately are somewhat independent of any particular language, and that they're talking about the idea of like a table or a computer or a flower or a truck in a way that the language is like a level above that, and that whatever language you speak and that I speak and that our developers and our customers speak, we can be talking about the same concept all using different words from different languages. It all ends up basically activating the same, I don't want to say thought process, but the same process inside of the large language models.
So how much we as a technologist understood humans, in order to make AI, the quality
Oh,
AI.
the more the better. The more that you
Yeah.
as a technologist will be understanding your fellow humans and having really good observational skills, having strong empathy for your customers, and watching people as they work and saying, well, I'm watching these people do the job and I see that this is what they do and this is the automatic part and this is the manual part. The more you're able to observe that and understand it, the better you're going to be at actually inventing new things to solve those problems.
So in coming years, in couple of years, or how AI is going to create impact.
I think ultimately it's going to be letting more people solve their problems more easily and more directly and in a location that is closer to them. This idea that we're going to see these hyper local applications crop up. That is a neighborhood application, or here's an application for all of the coffee shops in my city that wouldn't have been economical to necessarily build in the past are now going to be feasible. Or okay, here's a little restaurant with 10 seats in it. That owner maybe can build a little scheduling app or a ordering app or recipes or marketing app, whatever, in a way that was just not practical in the past. And I think some of these like individualized, personalized, hyper local things, interesting opportunities there. Lots and lots of interesting opportunities.
How AWS works for different industries like entertainment industry or finance industry. And there is a lot of change in entertainment industry and
Sure.
in the finances globally.
Okay, so there's a couple different things that matter there. So, of course, the technology itself matters, and having robust, reliable infrastructure is important. Having high security is absolutely important. Having AWS presence in many, many different countries. You're having the different regions, having the endpoints for content distribution across hundreds of countries is absolutely important. As I mentioned, the security is important, but also for each of these different industries, they'll often have different rules and regulations for security, for data storage, for encryption, for data management, for auditing. And so what we also do when we're working with let's say the media and entertainment business, there's a specific set of like regulations and compliance and certifications that are for specific to every different industry in every different country. So we put the energy into making sure that we actually meet those compliance regulations for all these different vertical industries to make sure that if you're in media and entertainment, there's a very specific kind of a rule. I don't even know the name of it, but if you are like storing content for let's say like blockbuster movies, brand new like Hollywood style movies, there's a specific way you have to actually protect that data to make sure that your movie isn't like leaked out or copied or anything like that. We have those kinds of certifications as part of our work at AWS to make sure that we can directly address the needs of and that's just one of dozens of industries where we would do that.
So when you're coming up with different new frameworks, coming with different solutions, security also becomes very important thing and also plays a major part. So how you are taking care of security?
So we actually always start with security as part of we find that when designing something new that you have to think of what are the security aspects of this new service or this new feature that we're doing, and you have to really think through security challenges and solutions before you start architecture and implementation. We sometimes people think in terms of like, okay, let's build something, and then at the last step, let's make it secure. That doesn't work. You have to say, let's engineer the security, and then we're going to build on top of that to actually have the solution that we want. So starting security early, doing it from the beginning, doing the testing, the auditing, the code reviews, doing that continuously as you build is essential.
So when I speak with different chief executive officers, when I interview them, who belongs to different industries and different countries, when they are the AWS customers, uh, not many uh, business owners have complete technology knowledge. They are more into their business development, and
Correct.
their developers and their technology team will take care of their business side of business things. So what do you when you interact with these business owners, when they come and talk about AWS, mainly what do you observe, they're talking about, no matter which industry they belong
So
to?
it really depends a lot on the scale of the business. And when I'm talking to like the largest of our enterprise customers, what they depend on isn't so much as like specific services or specific features as much as the fact that they know, because we've been talking about this for so long, the fact that we are out in the world, that we're connecting and listening to customers and understanding where effectively where customers want to go with all these technologies. So we are effectively talking to the rest of the world on their behalf and making sure that whatever we build actually supports everyone's plans to innovate moving forward. And for the last couple of years, they've said, we want to build applications that use generative AI. We want to be able to scale. We, of course, need that security layer in place as fundamentals. We want to build agentic applications. But these are all almost secondary to the fact that they just say, well, I want to count on AWS as my innovation partner.
So they have everything that that they need for the development of their business in AWS. So how you are able to give them that understanding that you can do anything using you can build your idea with AWS services. So
Yeah.
how these non-technical business owners can able to know what all services that you are
Sure.
offering.
So we wouldn't necessarily expect a non-technical owner to have a deep understanding of all the different services. In some of those cases, they might be using SaaS applications. They might be using pre-built applications from the AWS marketplace. They might be going to various technically savvy partners to either adapt, install, or build applications from scratch. So we wouldn't expect every possible customer to necessarily be deeply technical themselves, but we can always refer people to applications. We can refer them to partners. We can find various ways to really like bridge that gap between the need and the ability.
Do you have any strong advice to these business owners, chief executive officers who is watching and listening to this conversation from anywhere on this planet? Do you have any important thing that you want them to keep in their mind when they're using
Sure.
AWS?
So it's more important than ever to make sure that if you're at all driven by technology, to make sure that you're actually staying current with technology. There were times when I used to recommend to developers, I said, well, set aside some time every month or every week to make sure you're learning something new about some new technology. And I'm now saying, you know what, you almost have to learn something new every day to make sure that you're keeping up. And if you're a leader and you're running teams, you need to make sure that your builders also understand that and make sure that they not only understand that they should be learning, but make sure that as a leader, you're giving them opportunities to learn and making sure you're giving them some carve outs on their calendar where they can learn as well.
So how they can able to continue and have their applications in AWS for a long time? The constant change, especially the AI, which is going to play a major part. How they can be updated and can able to run their applications on the cloud?
Sure.
a long time?
So anything that they build on AWS is going to continue to run for a long period of time. We're not going to make anything obsolete, so they have to update it. But certainly, if a developer builds an application, they're going to want to keep improving it to take advantages of the newer models, the newer iterations, the new versions of those models. They're going to want to be listening to customers, adding new features as well. So it's the rare application that is just built and put up for use and that doesn't get changes regularly.
So one last question. What do you say about my work?
It's always wonderful to talk to you, and you've done a great job of building just an audience and a great podcast. I know that our viewers are going to really enjoy watching this, and I hope learn from our conversation.
So I have interviewed a lot of chief executive officers for, coming from different businesses, and also being a technologist coming from software background. I'm trying to understand different businesses and also trying to interview psychologists, doctors, police officers, uh, marine biologists, scientists, environmental scientists, like all industries, and from all the countries, more than 100 countries exports I have interviewed for my podcast in last
That's impressive.
3 years. So I'm that's what seeing this diversified diversified world that we have, and uh, and relating that with the work that you're doing. So uh, how this experience, this whole diversity experience, is going to be helpful for me in future in tech career?
Well, I think it's going to give you just perspective on the world and all the different kinds of people throughout the entire world, and it's so valuable to realize that there's a lot of differences between people in the world, but there's a lot that we all have in common. And I think you're in a really special position to be able to experience that firsthand and to convey that to your audience with what you do.
So how this experience I'm going to use for establishing connection with AI, because
Well,
since it's a diversified
I think that
communication system.
your location, your languages, the people you connect with, the businesses that are local to you, they're all going to be your contacts and your inspiration and your customers ultimately.
Your final words to the world.
Keep on learning.
Awesome, sir. Thank you very much for giving your valuable time, Jeff, again.
It's been wonderful to chat with you. Get up to date. Have a wonderful day.
Take care, sir. Bye.
All right. Bye bye.